Olá, eu sou o Eric Mourão e esse é o Retail Media FC Cast. Hoje nós temos Colin Lewis, keynote speaker, uma das vozes mais importantes do Retail Media. Ele acompanha o Retail Media globalmente e eu vou trazer esse papo em inglês para vocês. Vamos lá que eu vou apresentá-lo. Hi everyone, I'm Eric Mourão and this is the Retail Media FC Cast. I'm thrilled to announce my guest today. He's a world expert and a world's leading voice on retail media. Hello, bom dia, Colin.
Bom dia, Eric. That is the extent of my Portuguese, by the way. But hello, everybody. I'm so delighted to be on the Retail Media FC podcast.
Colin, to start this conversation, you please admit and confess and tell us your secret about your relationship with Brazil.
Well, I've got a lot of secrets, but I've got a very big secret, and anybody who ever follows me knows that I'm a complete motorsport nutcase, and I'm probably one of the few people on this call who, on this podcast, I should say, who's actually not only an Ayrton Senna fan, but I've also seen him win 2 races, not just one, 2 races. Wow. One when he was a little junior, and I was also a little junior because I was a little kid, and I saw him race, and he won a very prestigious race that I was there at, and I was like, yeah, he's like a pretty fast guy. And then like 8 or 9 years later, I'm at a Grand Prix, and he wins the Grand Prix, and he was so famous you couldn't even get near him to get an autograph. So yeah, I put it this way, I can even name all the Brazilian Formula One champions.
Really? So tell us. Who
number one, Emerson Fittipaldi, the guy who laid it all out for everybody else. Yeah. Then obviously Nelson Piquet after that, who then also everybody else followed suit. And then obviously we have Ayrton Senna. Now the thing is, there was a few of us who got close by, where the 3 big names, 3 championships for Senna, 2 championships for Fittipaldi, and 3 for Nelson Piquet.
Yeah. And a very interesting curiosity about Emerson Fittipaldi, that at the time he was racing, the races were not broadcasted on TV. So
right,
yeah. So the speaker on the Brazilian radio, who was following the race, who was speaking to the race, who what we call here narrator, was his father. So his father was the speaker. Yes, believe me.
So Wilson and Emerson's father was the commentator.
Yes, but the name of the father is Wilson. So Wilson, the racer, is Wilson Jr. By the way, the father also was a racer. He was called the Barão, like the Barão.
The Barão.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that all our listeners have now turned off and said, I don't care about Formula One from the 1970s. But we're here to talk about retail media. So let's get into it. What are you going to ask me, Eric? Ask me any topic.
Okay, I think we must start with the great article that you wrote about the TikTokification of retail media. So
well, I can already tell you, Eric, I'm regretting the title because even on stage, it's very, very difficult to pronounce. TikTokification is so. Or forget it in Portuguese. I mean, oh my God, So sorry about everybody. I came up with this crazy title, but let me explain what it is. And it's a very simple concept. So one of the things I do, Eric, when I'm doing my keynotes is I get up on stage and I call my audience a bunch of liars, which is obviously not the ideal way to run a keynote, but they all admit they're liars. And why do they admit they're liars? Because I say to everybody, I said, listen, this is the entry point to the universe. This screen, 3 centimeters by 4 centimeters, or if you're in the US, 3 inches by 4 inches, this is the entry to the universe. And we all spend a little bit more time on it than we would like to admit. And that's where I accuse them when I say, who doesn't do that? And then they all go, put their hands up and say, so you're a bunch of liars. So this is the entry point to the universe, if you will. And this is where the, if you will, eyeballs are. And the biggest app with 100 million users alone per month in the US is TikTok. But TikTok has flown down, if you will, downstream effects, and the downstream effects are the fact that shorts on YouTube, short snippets, if you will, on Instagram, and we're all sort of like bred into believing that shorts are where it's at, and we're all so used to it, and are kind of even affected to a certain extent our attention span. So if you take that fancy phrase, TikTokification, what I really mean is short form video in portrait form run through screens, typically done through user generated content, what used to be called UGC, what today is called creators or influencers. So my first kind of point that I make to people is that a lot of the time we're talking in marketing in general, because retail media is a subset of marketing, and we're talking about ad tech, we're talking about units, we're talking about screens, we're talking about anything else, but we're not seeing the world through this very simple lens. Is people are looking through the screen is changing how we think about inspiration, education, and discovery. And TikTok is the leading piece on that. And so one of my points when I do the keynotes in this, called TikTokification of retail media, what I really say is you've got to think about the world through this lens of the small screen, and that we have a model, if you will. I didn't say it's the greatest model, but we have a model. And the model is in China, because China has always been ahead in terms of digital marketing compared to anywhere else, because they went straight to very high grade screens about 10 years ago. And so they have live commerce, streaming, user generated content, and what I call calls, key opinion leaders as well. So if we think about it, we're just a few years behind what China has. And so we know where that's going. The live commerce, opinion leaders, influencers, and creators. And to wrap up the point, I'm not making this up, because actually we already know this, because this is what Unilever have already said. We're betting on influencers because it has more reach and more penetration and more insight and more kind of use to the user than, say, TV advertising. So that's TikTokification of retail media, and I'm going to challenge everybody to pronounce that correctly, because it's very hard.
Este episódio tem o patrocínio da TopSort. A TopSort é a plataforma número 1 de retail media no mundo, oferecendo a infraestrutura que impulsiona varejistas omnicanal, marketplaces e aplicativos de delivery em mais de 40 países. No Brasil, trabalha com grandes nomes como Magalu, Cencosud, OLX, RD, Droga Raia e Drogasil, Casa e Vídeo, Lojas Renner, Le Biscuit, entre outros, além de clientes internacionais. Acesse topsort.com e conheça mais sobre Retail Media 3.0. This episode is brought to you by TopSort. TopSort is the world's leading retail media infrastructure, supporting omni-channel retailers, marketplaces, and delivery apps across more than 40 countries. Clients include DoorDash, Magalu, OLX, Cencosud, RD, Raia Drogasil, Casa e Vídeo, Renner, Le Biscuit, and many others. Yes, it's not easy, but what you said is extremely interesting, because China is leading, and China has so much is showing how they are way more mature, because the penetration of their ad budgets, they have a huge share of retail media has a huge share of retail media. Sorry, I mean.
One, two, three. One way to think about that, Eric, is this, which is that in China, 75% of all budgets are on digital advertising, digital marketing. But because China went straight, and by the way, I'm speaking quite fluently about China because I work for a Chinese-owned firm, and I spent a lot of time in China, so it was very noticeable. So 75% of all marketing budgets are spent digitally. And the majority of Chinese commerce, e-commerce, whatever, is run through marketplaces like Taobao or Pinduoduo or whatever. So it's a marketplace-driven economy. And with a marketplace, you have a layer that you can layer over an advertising business over that. So when we are in the West, and I mean the West in the broadest sense, like Brazil or US or Europe or whatever the case is, where we see the world, we went through browsers, and then we went to phones. China went straight to phones. And because China is kind of like one country where each of the apps sort of get the blessing of the CCCP to go and run the two, which apps are going to be successful. It's a marketplace-driven e-commerce business, and it's uses WeChat and payments like Alipay. Very few other countries are like that's uniformity. So it's the uniformity enable them to develop live commerce, enable them to develop the situation where digital marketing is essentially retail media. We're different in the West. We don't have a WeChat. The closest is WhatsApp, but WeChat is the operating system of China compared to WhatsApp, which is essentially you and me messaging together to line up a podcast.
Yes, it's crazy. Yeah, I was like, I'm not well versed like you about China, but what I saw is it's interesting because it's everything mixed. Like it's live commerce with media, with it's the super app. So people like they have this eyeballs on their app. So it's amazing. But when you see like things that China is doing, but things that you see all over the world, what is relevant for Brazil? What is relevant?
That's a great question. Yeah, the reason why it's a good question is that if you're trying to get in touch with retail media and try to understand trends in retail media, and you go online and you do some searches or you use ChatGPT, whatever it may be, yeah. And what happens is you get a lot of American related content, and that's cool. Like that's 100% cool, because outside of China, retail media developed very fast in the US due to the power of Amazon advertising and obviously Walmart Connect and what it's done. So amazing. However, the world is different outside of the US. And that sounds like a very sort of ridiculous statement. But what I mean is the penetration of Walmart and the penetration of Amazon and the penetration of e-commerce means that the dynamic is very different. The scale of the market with 350 million people or whatever, with the one sort of legal sort of like entity, if you will, right across the country, means that you can buy media living in Boston for LA. Yeah. However, let's go to Europe, which has, say, 400 or 500 million people, or Brazil with 220 million people, or say Indonesia with, say, 220 million people as well. The thing with Europe is media is bought locally. You can live in London, but you don't buy media in Paris. In Paris, you buy media in Paris. And in Germany, in fact, it's even more fragmented in Germany because the media business is based out of Hamburg, but not out of Frankfurt, and not out of Munich, and not out of Düsseldorf, or even Berlin. And so media is always bought locally in that country. So therefore, because the US is such a huge country, they could develop digital commerce and they could develop retail media advertising on top of that. So what I say to people is, don't look to the US as your guide. Look at it as where we could be. But for the rest of the world, number one, what happens in store is what matters. And so once you get outside of these really high developed digital commerce markets, Brazil, France, Germany, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, what happens in store is what matters. And so what I say is number one trend, and what I'm seeing is people are realizing the digitization of in-store is where it's at to grow both inventory, but also to grow creativity and creative options, and also to engage the customer where they're at. So that's number one trend. Notwithstanding what I just said, number two trend that people can learn internationally is that, yes, some of these countries are behind in terms of their adoption on digital commerce, but everybody is getting behind digital commerce because we have these phones, and these phones have 4G or 5G, and they all have apps. And, it's one thing, I'm very lucky. I've gone to a lot of countries, and you'll see your Samsungs and you'll see your Huawei's and you'll see your Apples in every single country, and everybody's working through a series of apps. So for a retailer to boot up an app that does products and sells products in e-commerce and whatever, they want to do that because that margin through retail media, particularly around sponsored search, is much higher. So they're incentivized, if you will, to go and develop that. So although I've just said what happens in store is what matters, coming behind very fast is what is happening in digital commerce. So that's the second thing. You may say, and you're saying, I'm sitting here in, name your country, Argentina, Brazil, Peru, Serbia, Italy. Yeah, but we know digital commerce is growing faster than retail, typically 5 times faster than retail. And the third thing that is happening is there's an incredible amount of innovation. The stuff that I'm seeing, I actually use the phrase, Eric, innovation everywhere. So in other words, innovation kind of used to be seen as a thing coming from centers of innovation, such as Silicon Valley or whatever. Today, innovation is everywhere. I've seen amazing innovations in New Zealand. I've seen amazing innovations in Belgrade, in Serbia. I've seen amazing innovations in Bucharest and Romania. And so it's innovation everywhere. And of course, here in Brazil, or if you're in Brazil, I've seen incredible innovation there as well. What I've seen both the retailers do, the marketplaces like Mercado Livre do, and some of the tech vendors are just, it's incredible. So my last point I would say to everybody here is innovation can come from anywhere, and you don't necessarily have to look abroad. You can look around where you are in Brazil and say, man, we got some cool stuff here.
Esse podcast tem o patrocínio da Mega Mídia, especialista em potencializar resultados com inteligência no ponto de venda. Se a sua empresa quer transformar o varejo em um canal de mídia lucrativo, com estratégia, execução e resultado, vale conhecer a Mega Mídia. Especialista em trade marketing e retail media, a Mega também entrega soluções como digital signage, rádio indoor e ativações que fazem o ponto de venda vender de verdade. Acesse megamedia.com.br. This episode is brought to you by Mega Media, specialist in boosting results with intelligence at the point of sale. If your company wants to turn retail into a profitable media channel with strategy, execution, and measurable results, Mega Media is the partner to know. Expert in trade marketing and retail media, Mega Media also delivers solutions such as digital signage, in-store radio, and activations that truly drive sales at the point of purchase. Access megamedia.com.br. Yeah, I would love to learn and listen what you've seen about innovations, cool stuff that you're seeing in all those countries. If you can name at least one or two that you think it's gonna be something.
Well, I'll give you two. Okay, I'll give you two. Okay, so what can Brazil learn from countries that are not the US and the UK? Nothing wrong with the US and the UK, but what I've learned. One particular country in Romania, I met a tech vendor, and the tech vendor, very smart people, and they have an ability to draw analytics and insights on the fly and create customer segments and audiences at the typing of a few fingertips. And you can layer over the equivalent of, say, a copilot, like a ChatGPT. And you, Eric, can sit there instead of going, hey, Colin, can you write me a report? Or can you use this particular thing to go develop all this kind of content? I'll see you next week. Yeah. No, it's literally like a copilot layered over a box of cool data that you go, can you tell me the customer segment that is most likely to drink Coca-Cola between Wednesday and Sunday? Can you tell me what time of day they go in? What the penetration rate is? What's the index out? How can I create that audience, and how can I then map to a sponsored display campaign against that offsite? I've seen it happen live. In fact, I found it so incredible. I was like, I don't believe you. Yeah. And another one I saw in New Zealand was that these guys had basically built out screens network 3 years before anybody else had. 2022, 2023, whatever. And these screens had not only incredible brand messages, but they were literally at the front door as you walked into the store. And you could see then you were compelled to look at this. And they developed this the non-endemic piece as well. But they were doing that 3 years ago. And I never saw it anywhere else till about a year later. So innovation everywhere. New Zealand, and my final one was actually in Belgrade. I was walking down kind of the equivalent of a main street, if you will, and like an Oxford Street in London, if you will. And there was a big pharmacy chain. And the big pharmacy chain, the window was kind of glowing. There was this huge kind of digital screen that was glowing, like something you've seen in China. And I stood and looked at it and I went, what's going on here? Because I could still see into the store. And yet there was this super high-end grade screen. And I was like, hold on a second. This is like one of the big outdoor advertising companies, like a JC Deco or something like that, but in the window of a retailer. In this case, it was a pharmacy company. And right across the road was the tram stop. And there was like 100 people at the tram stop and everybody was driving by. And I'm like, hold on a second. These guys have turned themselves into JC Deco with their screen. And the ads were all like a L'Oreal and all these kind of businesses as well. And I went, I'd never thought of things like that. I thought it was like what's happening in store with what matters. No, these guys had a premium position on a main street with something that was 3 meters by 3 meters that popped on the street. It was incredible. So innovation everywhere is what I'd say. And lots of innovation can come from Brazil.
Yes, I promised to show you something that we are doing that is very interesting with retail media. So there are some stores that they are like they paint all the stores outside. So there are some things that I can show you when you come to Brazil, and you add the cases, the Brazilian cases, to your keynotes all over the world.
I need some more case studies. So it's a request from our Brazilian audience is bring me to Brazil so I can tell you get new case studies, and I can talk to you about the time I saw Ayrton Senna win Formula One races.
Wow, we have a deal, Colin. We have a deal. And
there's a deal. You just send me one Bitcoin, Eric, and I'll be there in a second.
I wish. I lost my Bitcoins on a boat accident.
Yeah, exactly. They're at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. We're still swimming around looking for them.
Yes. So, Colin, as you like, we are talking about of AI and JTK AI. I think it's we can have like a full conversation of hours talking about this, but I would like you to go very briefly on what you've seen on AI that is like everybody's talking about. Is there anything that you think people are not talking, or do you think, or your point of view on this matter of the AI influence?
That's a great question. Yeah. So we have models in the past of adoption and people understanding what's going on. So obviously, Google AdWords, the internet came, and then Google AdWords came around 04, 05, 06, and then Facebook advertising and so on. But their adoption rates were a lot slower. Took a couple of years. I used to run Google AdWords campaigns back in 2006, and even 10 years later, I was still explaining what Google AdWords was to people. However, ChatGPT and AI, kind of everybody knows it. How do I know? Because I travel around the world and I meet lots of people, and they're all using ChatGPT, like as I'm talking to them. So it's like one of the few moments in the history of technology, history of humanity, where everything's gone horizontal, as in everybody's got the same level of knowledge at the same time. Now you've got a spectrum, is what I would say. You've got a spectrum of people who are like, this is amazing, it's going to be amazing, agentic. And then you got the other end of the spectrum, which is like, this sucks, it's never going to work. Yeah. What I would say to people is that the adoption is much higher than almost anything else. So the stuff will come at us faster. Now, what matters most to both brands and retailers? Speed, cost, and effectiveness. And can a ChatGPT, can a model of AI deliver speed, cost, and effectiveness? Well, we actually have somebody who just described this quite recently. So WPP issued a very interesting white paper on this recently, but from the ad agency perspective. But they had a couple of great points in it. So the first one was, when we're talking to other people, we used to see things as I've got deadlines. Eric, I got deadline to this ad has to get out. And then once the ad was finished, it was done. And we couldn't change it thereafter. But there's no deadline anymore, if you will. So I can issue you with one campaign, I can issue you with another one the next day, because we got the tools within these creative tools to go and do them. The second thing was we can get into a lot more insights and analytics, something I touched on earlier, where you can imagine how we can create cohorts, where we can create insights from existing data, but access it a lot more. And so therefore that means you can do the next bit of that, which is I can create prescriptive and predictive and propensity models much faster for my audiences that I may already have. Yeah. And then the other piece is like around creative. I call it like the reason why I'm a big fan of, we'll call it AI, but I mean like ChatGPT and things like that, is it democratizes access to creativity. So Canva is amazing. It's, you've got creativity at your fingertips. But ChatGPT and all these other tools are amazing because it's prompt, it's words. Yeah. I did this earlier today. I was like, I want to go and create a brand positioning, and I have a prompt. I want to go create the landing page that will work with those wordings. I have a prompt. I want to do an analysis of what my competitors are doing, their tone of voice, the keywords they're using, the cliches that they're using, and where's the white space. I did that today. Yeah. Then it's very easy to imagine in a retail media context, which is much easier use to go and create models, much easier use to go and create audiences, much easier to get insights, but more importantly, the issue around creativity. So in my 7 challenges for retail media early this year, I talked about creativity. And what's happening in retail media, all the conversation in Brazil and everywhere else is about the ad tech, the audiences. It's kind of like, it's like a production line and measurement, but it never talks about the thing that is the unique piece, which is the creativity aspect, which is how that's the kind of one unique piece. Having a better located display ad kind of doesn't matter if the ad sucks. Yeah. So creativity is one thing and attention is another. Understanding the rules of not rules, but the potential of creativity and the rules of attention and applying them to retail media is the next big unlock. But we have a problem, which is that the marketers don't understand retail media. The agencies don't really understand retail media, so they're not going to apply all the other things. They're still trapped in a world of TV advertising. So where's AI? AI is the Trojan horse in retail media for better insights, easier insights, better models, better creativity.
Esse episódio tem um patrocínio da JBP Hub by Midfi, primeira plataforma desenhada para estruturar e acompanhar JBPs de ponta a ponta, trazendo mais transparência, eficiência e resultados. And the newest sponsor of the show, JBP Hub by Midfi, the first platform designed to structure and track JBPs end-to-end, bringing more transparency, efficiency, and results. I totally agree with you that creativity is underrated. Like when I'm pitching like retail media platforms or pitching retail media to marketers and retailers, sometimes they okay, yes, I will have this data. It's gonna be easy to create an audience or automate the audience curation, but they don't like realize the power of this tool that in how they can transform or use the tools, the ad tech, to create amazing campaigns, to create campaigns with such a level of accuracy to target, or accuracy to measure, not only beyond ROAS, or not only measuring ROAS or comparing, having some hypotheses and trying to find try to understand better their customers. Sometimes they even underrate the insights that retail media can bring. They have been asking for data from retailers for years, and now that they can have some very interesting data because they are advertising on retailers, they don't know how to do it. So it's you.
Well, I have a point of view on that, Eric, which is very interesting. Not my point of view, but what I've realized is very interesting. Talking to a lot of people, just like what you said there. And I've heard this from retailers, but I've seen it with the brands, which is that, Eric is, telling me, Eric, got Colin, I've got this incredible insights. All this stuff is amazing. You can do anything with it. You can just tap your, oh, great, yeah, I want more. I want better measurement. I want ROAS. I don't just want ROAS. No, I want new to brand. I want this. I want that. I want the other. And okay, Colin, here you got it. It's there. And guess what? It doesn't get used. And this is what I'm hearing from my retailers and brand and vendor clients across the globe, which is we can give it to them, but they don't use it, or they don't know how to use it. And that's fair. It's a little bit of an indictment, but it's fair. Because guess what? I've been a marketing director for years, and I've been a CMO for years. Life is tough. You're busy, and you don't have like a couple of hours to nose around using Copilot to delve into retail media data. Yeah, you just don't have that time. And you don't even have the time to frame it in your head to say, this is a valuable use of my time. I need to go do it. You rely on other people to tell you, and you have to, because your role is not about marketing per se. Your role is about people management and managing upwards. You got to manage your boss. And so I'm not surprised. So it's not a criticism. I think we're going to move to that where it's say on your phone and you can do it. And then it's like a different thing. And then you can go, hey, Eric, I saw this cool thing. Tell me more. Oh, Colin, great. I'm going to get into that detail.
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's an opportunity. Like people will get also more. I think we are evaluating like, and one of the things like that you mentioned that you've been a CMO for years and marketing director. There is some subset of commerce media that I am really excited. Is how can I say? It's not only travel media, but is airline media, like airlines becoming a media channel. And I am very excited about this because you can have lots of data from the customer and you have lots of eyeballs, because when you are stuck in a plane, you can...
Well, Eric, you have come to the right place. Okay. So I've been a marketing director for airlines for about 8 to 10 years. One of my roles as a marketing director was to sell the media space. Yeah. Sell the stuff online, in store, on the aircraft as well. So the big difference from when I was doing it, say 10 years ago, was everything was disparate. So we had what happened on the website, what happened in the confirmation page, what happened in the email thereafter, and then the sequence to that. That was one. Then there was like a different company who kind of sold what was in the magazine. Yeah. And then there was a different thing that happened on the aircraft, and they were all disparate stuff. So one of the things the good travel media businesses have done is actually integrate them, whereby they can create packages and they can create these audiences. So it's a very, very interesting model. Now, what I would say is for brands listening to this, I want you to take a very good look at them and be very serious when you're doing an analysis of this, for a couple of reasons. So one is all the hyper-end travel media is coming out of the US. And that's cool. The reason is the US is a very, very large market with 3 major airlines: United, American. There is a third airline, and I am having a mental block as to what it is. And so the guys from, say, United have got their own travel media setup called Connective. They're also selling the travel media on behalf of JetBlue. And so they have a package and have a series of audiences, and the scale is there. Now, there is no country that is as big as that in terms of its airline structure. So if you come to, say, the UK, there's British Airways, which is owned by part of IAG Group. There's EasyJet and there's Ryanair. They ain't never come together. Yeah, there's no big 300 million audience or whatever it could be for, say, United Airlines. So the apps stand alone, the magazine stands alone, and there's no in-flight. Yeah. And then British Airways is not selling on behalf of the other airlines that they work in the group, because British Airways is, guess what, flying out of Heathrow. The other part of that group is Vueling, based out of Barcelona. And if you're advertising to a Vueling customer, you don't care about British Airways. Yeah, it's a different setup. So travel media is interesting, but it's not as sexy as people think, just simply because people always travel locally from the home country, and the scale isn't there.
Yeah, and media is a game of scale and reach, right? So if you don't have reach,
It's Yeah, it's if you don't have reach, So I'm going to make this next statement up, but the airlines in Brazil flying around Gol and Latam and whatever airlines are in Brazil, they don't have the scale. So eventually, you end up going, you know what, reach and scale. I'll just go spend on something else.
Yeah, I agree. Um, Colin, you sent me a question to ask to Andrew Lipsman on the previous episode, so I want to make this question for you. What happened that you what you thought about retail media that you that you realized that you were wrong about it, like on a predictions or any point of view that you had before, and you realized that.
Yeah. I know it's a great question. Actually, it's two things I'm wrong on. Okay, which is one is I really thought that data clean rooms would take off to an nth degree, that they would just go exponential, simply because it was like, wow, I can do this data, I can look at this data, and this would be very easy. But it's actually still very hard. They haven't really taken off. There's very few use cases for them. I know why, but I was totally wrong about that. The second thing I was wrong about was I really believed that retail media was perfect for the long tail of mom and pop businesses who could then access and they could, get their products online. And where I was wrong with that was that actually the big retailers want to go after the big brands. And the big brands have budget, and the big budgets are committed so that they can, as in they can get commitment on the big budgets, which therefore means they can build a business. Whereas if I've got to go after Eric and Colin and John and Mary and Patricia, there's 10 of them, I can only do through self-serve. And we know self-serve is a long-term play. It's people who's their own money, so they're much more careful about obviously how they spend. It's not a budgeted thing, it's not a year-long thing. And we have a model obviously of this as well, which is Amazon advertising, which is that's where they started, but that's not where everybody else started. So eventually we'll get there, but I thought it was going to happen straight away. If I was a small store, a small brand, I would still probably go into a retail media business. But where I got it wrong was I'd probably walk in and say, hey, Eric, from major company, major retail media network, I'd say, I've got 20 grand. And they'd say, get out of here, buddy. Too small. I need to talk to L'Oreal because they're coming in with 250 grand and you're taking up the seat. Get out. So that's where I got that wrong.
Yeah. And going to the end of this very good conversation, Colin, what are the mistakes people are making, both on the retail and the brand side? What mistakes?
Well, there's three sets of mistakes. There's three sets of mistakes, I would say. Yeah. One is ad tech, so technology stack. One is the retailers, and one is the brand side. And I see all three. So the brand side is apropos what I said earlier. The marketers aren't engaged, and they're a little bit snooty about it, and they see it as performance. So that's always going to flatline what we're doing. The second thing is the retailers. They've kind of got a rod. In English, we say got the beating themselves with they got a rod to beat themselves with. Is the whole idea around measurement, because they've been allowed to get beaten up over measurement and transparency and all the rest of it. Now I know why, because they're retail businesses, not measurement business. But the point is, they are still they got themselves sucked into that problem, and that problem will not be resolved. Even in 10 years, Eric, when you and me are old and grey and we'll be in our wheelchairs and we'll be pulling around talking about retail media on Copacabana Beach, we'll still be talking about measurement in retail media. Yeah. And the third from the ad tech guys is they are selling very sophisticated technology solutions, whereas the retail media networks don't have sophisticated problems. They got internal management issues, managing upstairs, and they're selling tech and not selling results in terms of better yield, better results, better click-through rates, and so on. They're selling platform thinking in a world that doesn't care about platforms, that cares about media, retail today. Let me wrap up this point. They have these kind of phrases in English. We call it the oldest profession. So farming is obviously the oldest profession. Yeah. So one of the other big old professions is retelling. So if you go to Herculaneum in Pompeii, you'll see the pictures on the wall with the posters, with the kind of things with the prices and all the rest of it. And the Sumerians had they invented accounting in order to count for the bushels of wheat and whatever it may be. And they had accounting for that, which means they had stores. So we got 8,000 years, whatever it is, 3,000 years, I should say, not 8,000 years of retelling that we know of. So retelling is amazing at one thing. Buy at one price, sell at another. That's retelling. Yeah, that's the way it is. Transactional thinking. And the brands, the ad tech guys are going and selling them, thinking they're media business and thinking they know this, and they don't. Their retailers are hard. So tune into getting results from today, because the retailer, having worked in retail, they don't care about next year. They got to sell today. Here's a good way to lose your job, Eric. Walk into the Monday morning trading meeting and say, we did terrible this weekend. 5 weekends of that in a row, you don't have a job. Today matters. The distant future is next year. Give me results today.
Yeah. Wow. Very, very interesting, Colin. I would love to keep talking. I know you have like to go. I want to be very respectful with your time. I'm extremely honored and happy to. I would say that much more than honored and happy. Like I don't know the words. I don't find words to say.
Delighted.
Yeah. I think it's very. It's more than delighted. It's more than honored. I'm following you for quite a bit. So I'm following the 7 challenges. I'm following you on LinkedIn, your podcast also. So it's great that I'm having the opportunity to share a little bit to pick your brain and share with the audience of the Retail Media FC. I'm working hard to have you here in Brazil. Hope we can have.
Well, I'm on the way to the airport as we speak, Eric. I think there's a flight. It's a private jet flying me to Rio, so we can meet, or even Curitiba. We can go and meet tomorrow. But listen, honestly, more seriously, I'm so delighted to have a chat. You and me have a great rapport. Delighted to be on Retail Media FC. And if there's a billionaire in Brazil who's got a private jet, just send it over. I'll be there tomorrow.
Okay, I will send a message on the private clubs here of billionaires that I have hacked on WhatsApp groups.
Eric, I thought that I would assume that you're on all of those WhatsApp groups. So just give them my number, 1-800-Colin for you. I'll be there.
No, I'm and it's true. Like I really want to have you here. I want to have you here in Brazil. We'll share your content here, as there are so many slides on. I have been teaching. To the retail media course in a very well known university in Brazil. So I had some of your slides, and I credit, of course. And you have such ability to see beyond the average, so it's great to have opportunity to talk to you.
Well, I hope when I'm in Brazil that you'll introduce me as Professor Colin. How about that?
Perfect. It would be amazing. Professor is no. By the way,
Professor Colin.
No. Professor is not a good nickname, because, as you know,
no,
you know why? You know why?
Yeah.
Because Professor, you know who are the driver who was named as Professor?
Oh, Alan Prost.
Yes, the biggest rival.
So that's a bad
Senna.
One if you're a fan of this guy.
Yeah.
Or in my case, that's just the 2 books I've got. I've got another 3 downstairs.
Yeah. I will take you to Interlagos. You're gonna see the place of the Grand Prix.
Well, I'm expecting to be brought to Interlagos and driven around Interlagos.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be fun.
I'm gonna challenge you.
Yeah, who's gonna have the fastest lap time? Listen, thanks a lot. You've been great. And listen, everybody, get in touch with me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Colin Lewis. But other than that, you'll see me at Interlagos very soon.
Very nice. Don't forget to have the flag, the Brazilian flag. You know, it's very important when you cross the finish line. It's very important. Thank you, Colin. Thank you so much. It was amazing, man. I think we produced a very nice content here.
So I hope so. Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
Go have dinner with your wife. Oh,
I'm gonna have a dinner. I'm gonna have a dinner with my lovely wife, and I will see you in Rio. And obviously, I'll talk to you before then.
Okay, just
when I leave, I gotta leave. It loads up when I'm doing this as well. Isn't that right?
Sorry.
When I leave, it still loads up, so I'm not going to switch off the browser. It's okay.
Oh, it's okay. Just let me.
Yeah. No worries. Okay, better go. Thanks a lot. You're a star. It's uploading now. Okay. It's
okay,
uploading.
Colin.
It's
bye
just
bye.
telling me now.
Oh, just let me tell you something very very briefly. If you, as I'm going to London, I told you.
Those 2 weeks, as I say, are now free.
Yeah. So when I'm as I'm going to London, very important thing.
Thursday,
I will send you a list of companies that TopSort wants to reach. If you have anybody that just one or two people, if you're close, if you close enough, just
I can introduce you to. Yeah, sure, yeah, yes. I can do that
because I will be able to put the expenses on TopSort if I.
Oh yeah. No, I'll line you up with a few people. Don't worry.
You know what? It's just because of this. Otherwise, I will have to put on my own expenses. But
oh yeah, no, I'll get you in front of somebody. Okay.
Thank you so much.
No worries. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye bye.
All right.